Hello guys, today we will paint a still life which we'll call a blue jug with a pear and an apple. It's a still life that consists of 3 objects and drapery. We put the drapery into the jug in order to diversify the composition. Gently, we begin to sketch a thin silhouette of a jug, a pear and an apple. Our still life will be made in watercolor technique, so we took a specially suitable for this paint watercolor paper. When we see that the object silhouettes are exactly as we need, we begin to press the pencil stronger and more confidently. Here I am drawing all the details of the object, and also I pay attention on the handle of the jug. It will be great if we draw all the elements as much detailed as possible, because the more careful and detailed drawing we make, the easier it will be to work with the watercolor in the future. When working with watercolor, there are some features that we will talk about during our lesson. The main feature of this technique is that we go from the light color to the dark one. So at first, we introduce the lighter colors, and then gradually we saturate them and make them more and more darker. Now I'm started to make the first mayas of the jug. I'm mixing the color that is the main color of the jug. Then, gently, with light movements, I'm painting the lightest area. It's always important and good to remember that the main color has the shades, so if the main color of the jug is blue, still it is affected by the environment of other objects that have a different color. Therefore, reflections of other colors appear in it, which we also show by adding shades of other colors to the blue color. For example, it may be some reddish or purple color or yellowish one in some places, depending on what object or color is reflected on our jug. Now I'm showing a bright place in the shade at the edge of the jug, which is called a reflex or reflex glow. A reflex is a reflected light, so it's always darker than the primary color. But nevertheless, in the shadows, there is such a light reflex lighting, and it surely must be done, especially when there are objects of rotation where the reflex indicates that the object is round. We also reflect other objects. Now I'm showing how to make a pear reflection, which is also reflected on the jug. It's very nice, it animates the drawing and makes it interesting. There are 2 techniques for watercolor painting. There is glazing technique and Prima technique. Prima is a painting technique for working on wet materials. But in creative works, as a rule, these techniques are used in combination, so there can be the properties of both techniques together. Also, one technique can flow into another, thus expanding the range of our capabilities. So for sure, you can wet the entire sheet, but if this is the academic work, then it's better to manage the drawing. In this case, it's necessary to wet small fragments of the pattern, in our case even small fragments of the jug. So I color with a single color a small piece, and while it's wet, I'm also working with other tones in it. In this case, there are different tones of blue. It can be cobalt, maybe ultramarine, maybe even shades of violet if you need to strengthen the color in some places. So the more colors we are mixing, the more beautiful, lively and interesting our drawing will be. The jug has a glossy surface, and we try to show it, to show the shine. The glitter of the object can be shown by using the fact that we make sharp glints and smears that mimic the glitter of the faience. It's also very important to display the background next to the object, because only on the background we understand how much this object is darker or lighter. We see how true we have taken the luminous intensity of the object, the degree of its illumination and saturation as well. Therefore, I immediately put the background that touches the object. It would be very difficult to get there if there was white paper between the background and the object, and it would be very difficult to find the right tone of the object. The concept of tone in painting also has a fundamental importance. Watercolor painting is a tone and a color. That's why the color, variety of color shades, are as important as a tone, tonal saturation, degree of illumination, and how strongly and darkly we take an object in the light or saturated in the shade. That is, one object flows into another or flows into the background that touches the object. This is the correct course of academic work. Just like while working with the object, I begin to draw the background, and in this case it's a drapery that comes out of the jug. At first with light colors and then we strengthen the shadows. We compare our sketches with the model all the time and saturate them more and more in places we need. It would be wrong to paint in very contrasting and aggressive colors. Although, if you feel confident, you can do it. However, the artists try to work cautiously, so at first the painting is being covered with lighter colors, and as the fragment of our painting is still wet, we can introduce darker and contrasting shadows, like I'm showing you now. We covered the shadow on the drapery next to the jug, and the jug has immediately gained the volume. Next, we show the darkening of the drapery in some places. We are using the tip of the brush in order to verify the contour of the jug. It's very important to follow the pattern and the shape of the object, because sometimes while painting we can lose the shape. While working on a color or illumination, sometimes the shape may go away. That's why in some moment the artist comes back to the shape and corrects it. Sometimes at this point we are missing out on the color. In this case, we can come back to work on the color and the tone and continue our work. This is how the academic work of still life is being made. It's very important that the brush tool is the Squirrel brush. Typically, the best way is to take the 8th or the 9th brush size number, because only a large brush puts a good brush stroke, which is convenient for the artist to work with. At the same time, the Squirrel brush has a small tip, using which the artist can paint some different thin objects or elements of the objects. Working in watercolor technique is quite dynamic and fast. That's why there is no time to change the brushes. It's very important to paint while the paper is wet. It is good to use this moment of wet paint, because at the moment when the paint is wet, we can beautifully fill it in with other colors, show the variety of the colors. Therefore, the artist is working on a piece of still life painting while it is still wet, using this property. Later, this fragment dries up and the artist can refine its shape, coming back to the shape of the object. If you have noticed that somewhere the paint is too dark, you can run out the brush and remove unnecessary dark colors. So working with paints is actually quite manageable, and if you have a little experience, you can create quite interesting paintings. Now on the drapery's background we can paint an object. Since we have made the tone of the drapery, we can accurately take the tone of the object that is on the drapery. The main thing is not to do it on a white sheet of paper. Now, on the background of the blue jug, we can start painting a pear. We paint it much lighter than the jug, because the pear is the lightest object of our composition, our still life. Comparing with the jug, the pear has more matte glares. That's why we wipe them with a dry brush, and the glare is not so sharp as we painted them on the jug, trying to emphasize its glossiness. So now the pear has such a fruity peel and the glare is more matte. Thus we show the materiality of the object. That is very important and distinguishes the work of different artists in terms of the ability to transfer material to objects. Also, do not forget about the reflex. The reflex is a reflected light. and it must be shown in the shadows and in the places where the shapes are wrapped. So the shadow usually goes to the very edge and is weakened by a slight reflex glow. Similarly, we introduce in the pair not just a shadow, but the color of the drapery on which the pair stands. Drapery has a bluish-greenish tinge, therefore this color is present in the shade of the pair. It gives it such a light greenish tinge. Actually, it's just blue paint mixed with the yellow one, and this is how we get such kind of effect. But nevertheless, everything is quite accurate and similar to the colors that we see in reality. Similarly, near the pair, we lay the background color, the table or the podium on which our performance with the object stands. We make the background is much darker than we painted a pear or a jug, because it's quite dark, and the darker we take it, the more the pear and the other objects start to glow. Also, a very important thing is the direction of the brushstroke in the painting, which shows the direction of the shape. Since in this case we are drawing a flat area, we show this by such smears that we are given a flat area. Now I'm drawing a shadow on another fruit. It's such a small apple. I'm showing the darker part. First I painted the lighter colors, and only now I'm adding some dark ones. The sequence is very important for painting in a watercolor technique. There is no white paint in watercolor. If we want to use white paint, then we can say that we paint in the tempera technique, because classical watercolor technique means using white paper instead of white paint. So the artist simply leaves the pieces of dry sheet white or slightly dulls them with some color rather pale, and thus there is an illusion of this white color. It's also important to show the cast shadow of the objects. Right now I'm showing this. That is, under each object there is a cast shadow. We know that there are two kinds of shadows. It's a foam shadow and a cast shadow. And a foam shadow always flows into a cast shadow. Thanks to the cast shadow, we show that the object we have is either lying or standing on the plane and not hanging in the air. In nature, this does not happen. So you need to draw the cast shadows, show them sufficiently contrast and dark, and then there will be an illusion of reality in your works. When the drawing dries a little, we come back to some specific fragments. In particular, we can outline the pear a little and return to the background. But we should not paint any fragments away from our composition. There should not be white paper between our brushstroke and the object. So we always combine something to something. In this case, I am showing the dark background, and the darkness of this background I take from the drapery, thus clarifying the tone of the drapery. Also, we are constantly comparing with the light drawing. Once the background is laid, it can be clarified or it can be made more saturated if we need. We will add a few more smears to show the direction of the cast shadow, because the light falls from the left to the right, so the right side should be more lit. And here it's necessary to add some contrast in the shade. Watercolor has an interesting property. When it dries, it becomes brighter, so we are calmly waiting until some fragments of the picture dry up, and then if we need something to emphasize or add some darkening, we color them again in some places. Now we see a general solution to the work. We can compare again with live drawing and with blows, finish it where we need it without fear. We finished our still life in a watercolor technique that is called blue jug and yellow pair. If you like the drawing lesson, do not forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.